Hi, this is Sarah back with another History Spark story. Have you ever had one of those moments where something just clicked? Maybe it was a single sentence in a book that hit you right in the chest. Maybe it was a quiet conversation with a stranger on one of your hardest days. Maybe it was sitting somewhere completely ordinary and feeling, for the first time in a long time, like everything was going to be okay. Most of us have a moment like that. One quiet evening that changed the direction of everything that came after. On May 24th, 1738, a tired, discouraged 34-year-old minister named John Wesley had exactly that moment. And what grew out of that one ordinary evening changed the spiritual lives of more than 80 million people around the world. Stay right here with me. This one is something special. Before that night on Aldersgate Street, John Wesley was not a success story. He was not the towering, inspiring figure whose name would one day grace thousands of churches on every continent. He was a man who felt, quietly and completely, like he had failed at the one thing he had given his entire life to. At Oxford, Wesley and his brother Charles had formed a small club of students who took their faith with extraordinary seriousness. They were methodical, disciplined, and utterly committed. Other students watched them from across the courtyard and found the whole thing faintly ridiculous. They started calling them Methodists, meaning people who do everything by a rigid method. It was meant as a cutting insult. Wesley collected that nickname like a badge of honor and kept right on going. In 1735, at 32 years old, Wesley set sail for the new American colony of Georgia, absolutely burning with the desire to preach to Native Americans and colonial settlers. He believed this was his great calling, his moment, his purpose. It did not go well, at all. The Native Americans were not interested in his ministry. The colonists found him rigid and difficult. He fell deeply in love with a young woman who married someone else entirely, and the small colonial community turned against him. Wesley eventually slipped away from Georgia in the middle of the night, boarded a ship back to England, and wrote in his journal one of the most honest and heartbreaking sentences I have ever read from any historical figure. He wrote, "I went to America to convert the Indians, but oh, who shall convert me?" Sit with that for just a moment. Here is a man who had given everything he had to his faith, and he felt completely hollow. On the evening of May 24th, 1738, John Wesley did not want to go out. He wrote in his own journal that he went, and I want you to hear his exact words here, very unwillingly, to a small religious meeting being held on Aldersgate Street in London. It was a modest, unremarkable gathering, ordinary people sitting in an ordinary room. Someone was reading aloud from Martin Luther's preface to the Book of Romans. And then something happened that John Wesley spent the rest of his long life trying to put into words. He wrote, "About 9:15, while he was describing the change which God works in the heart through faith in Christ, I felt my heart strangely warmed." My heart strangely warmed. Not a thunderclap, not a blinding vision, not a dramatic moment that anyone else in that plain little room even noticed. Just a quiet Tuesday evening, a tired man sitting in a wooden chair, listening to someone read aloud, and a warmth moving through him that changed the entire direction of his life. He walked out of that room a completely different man, and the world, though it did not yet know it, was about to feel the difference. What John Wesley did after that night on Aldersgate Street is one of the most extraordinary stories of energy, compassion, and sheer stubborn determination that I know. When the established churches of England closed their doors to him because his message was too passionate, too direct, too concerned with the poor and the forgotten, Wesley did not argue with them. He did not sit down. He took his message outside, literally outside. He preached in fields, in town squares, in the open air. To coal miners coming off their shifts in filthy clothes, to prisoners in dark cells. To the poor, the sick, the overlooked, the people that polished and prosperous churches simply did not particularly want filling up their pews on Sunday mornings. And his message, at its heart, was this: grace is for everyone. Faith is not the possession of the educated or the wealthy or the respectable. It belongs to every single person standing in this field right now. And the people came. They came in their thousands. Over the course of his life, John Wesley traveled an estimated 250,000 miles, the vast majority of it on horseback, through every kind of English weather imaginable, and preached more than 40,000 sermons. That is the equivalent of preaching a new sermon every single day for over 100 years. He did it in roughly 50 years of active ministry. He was not only a preacher, he was a reformer. He opposed slavery decades before abolition became a cause that respectable society was willing to discuss. He established schools for children who had no access to education. He opened medical clinics for people who could not afford a doctor. He wrote extensively about the link between poverty and suffering. He was a man who believed in the absolute core of his being that faith without action is simply noise. He lived to be 87 years old and was still standing at a pulpit within weeks of his death. His final words, spoken quietly to the small group gathered around his bed, were simply this: "The best of all is, God is with us." Today, the Methodist movement that grew from that one reluctant evening on Aldersgate Street has more than 80 million members in churches on every continent. 80 million people carrying forward the warmth that one tired, hollow, discouraged man felt sitting in a wooden chair on an ordinary Tuesday night in 1738. He went to that meeting very unwillingly. History is so profoundly glad that he went. You know what I keep thinking about every time I sit with this story? Wesley did not feel ready that night. He did not feel worthy. He did not feel inspired, confident, or certain of anything at all. He was a man coming off one of the great failures of his life, walking down a London street in the dark, going very unwillingly to a meeting he probably thought would change nothing. And that is exactly where everything changed. I think about that a lot, because most of us have seasons in our lives that feel exactly like Wesley's Georgia. Seasons where we gave everything we had, and it did not work the way we hoped, where we came home quieter than we left. We wondered if we had somehow missed our moment. And what Wesley's story tells me, in the most tender and genuine way, is that the moment you are looking for might be waiting in the most ordinary place, on the most ordinary evening of the most unremarkable week. You just have to show up, even unwillingly, even tired, even uncertain. And that makes me think about the stories you are carrying. Because every single person watching right now has a story of a moment that changed them, a turning point, a conversation, a quiet evening that shifted everything that came after. And those stories, your stories, are the most irreplaceable history that exists in the world today. Have you ever thought about writing them down? Not for anyone outside your own family, not for the world. Just for the people who will come after you and who will want to know more than you can possibly imagine right now who you were, what you believed, what broke you, and what put you back together again. Your grandchildren deserve to know about your Georgia, and they deserve to know about your Aldersgate Street too. The moment your heart was strangely warmed, whatever that looked like for you. Those stories are treasures, and only you can tell them. Please do not let them disappear. That is why I want you to pick up the free family story writing guide right below this video. It is warm, it is gentle, and it will help you find your way into the stories that matter most. It costs you absolutely nothing, and it could mean everything to someone who is not yet born. And while you are down there, please hit that subscribe button and join our History Sparks family. Every single day, I bring you a story that is surprising, human, and real. Stories that remind you that history was never about famous names on monuments. It was about ordinary people in ordinary rooms on ordinary evenings who said yes to something they could not fully explain. Just like Wesley. Just like you. I will see you tomorrow, and I promise you, you do not want to miss it.